Hi, my name's Doug, and I've been a Raider fan and a collector for over 50 years. As a kid playing football in the schoolyard, I ran into a friend, and he was a big fan of the AFL, and he asked me one day who my favorite team was. We were in his room, and he had a poster, and it showed all the different logos from the AFL, and I saw this logo right here and asked, well, who's that team? He told me, well, that's the Raiders, and from that day on, that was it. I became a Raider fan and started following them with loyalty from that point forward. At the point in time, I didn't really know that they were the local team. I lived in the Bay Area, but that just even made it better. This one here, this logo, it's from probably 67, 68, somewhere circa that area. You can see it has the old AFL logo on it still. It's one of my favorite items. Somewhere around 69 or 70 as a kid, I caught a couple of Wheaties Top Box and sent in. I had this very same poster in my room. Had it for years. It took me a long time as an adult to find it again. And to this day, it's one of my favorite posters. One of the things I love to collect are posters, especially the old Sports Illustrated. Back in the day, you could take a couple bucks and send in Sports Illustrated, and you could get a poster. These are some of the early versions. Of course, we got Fred Biletnikoff. That was one of the first ones. And then there's Kenny Stabler. I've got Daryl LaMonica. You got the old man, George Blanda. There's Pete Banaszak. One of the rarest of them all is Bubba Smith. And then, of course, we got Kick 'em in the Head Ted. These early ones like this that are just a pure photograph with hardly any writing on them. They were circa 1968 to 73, 74, somewhere in that time period. This poster here, as I talked about earlier, this was part of an NFL merger series that they did. They did several of these over the years. I've got another from the later on years. This one here happens to be a special version for advertising Rawlings. This was only available in the side stores and put up for advertisement. It's got the Rawlings logo. You'll see these around sometimes without that. They're the ones that would be sold to the normal public. This one was just displayed in stores only. This is another one of my favorite items. I was in Seattle at the time. We were staying at the Westin Hotel. I came out of the elevator, and lo and behold, there was Al Davis standing in the lobby. He was waiting for his wife to come down. I went over. He was talking to somebody at the time, but that person left, and so I walked up to him and told him I had been a lifelong Raider fan and thanked him for all the years of such good memories and good times. And it was funny. He lit right up and gave me the greatness of the Raiders is in their future speech, and really enjoyed that, and shook his hand and talked a little bit about football. I didn't have anything to get an autograph on at the time, so I just kind of walked away. But then my wife showed up later on, and she rescued me. She went and grabbed this paper from the hotel itself and walked over, and he was gracious enough to give us his autograph. Another old poster here. This was from advertisement. It's an original from an old AFL game. You can see between it's a doubleheader down in Anaheim. Between the Boston Patriots and the Oakland Raiders. The second game is between the Chargers and the Chiefs. Tickets are only $4, $5, $6, and $7, so a real bargain. This was from obviously from 1966. I have another one right next to it that I really like. This was for his name was Brian. Brian was Sternberg. Brian Sternberg was a pole vaulter for the Washington Huskies, but he hurt himself on a trampoline and became quadriplegic. And so anyway, the Raiders put together a charity event for him in Portland. So this was the Chiefs versus the Raiders. This was a 1963 preseason game. These posters, there was 2 or 3 of them were found in a warehouse, actually, lying on a shelf somewhere, kind of in the dust. So very rare poster. And over here I have an old schedule from 1964. These just would used to show up inside liquor stores and stuff on top of their counters and that. So this one here, this is used to hang inside the Chargers front office at one time, or somewhere in our office. Willie Brown signed that for me, and I asked Willie when he signed it, I said, "Did you knock that ball down?" And he kind of looked at it for some time and glanced back and forth at it, and then looked up at me and said, "Yeah, I knocked it down." We all had a good laugh. I thought that was pretty funny. Pennants are another thing that I like to collect. This one here is early from 1960. You can see from the logo it still has the old Seniors logo that we like to call it because of the mustache on there. It's a blue and white pennant. I've got another one here right next to it that's kind of the same thing, but the mustache is now gone after they clearly know that Seniors, which only lasted for about a week. In between, they did finally come out with their colors, gold and black. This is what is referred to as a block gold and black, block lettering pennant. These are very rare and very sought after pennant collectors. These are one of the ones that everybody wants. And of course, these, you see these quite a bit. These are from 1960 as well, black and gold. And there's more of these around. I actually suspect that some of these may have even been copied. When Al came in '63, he saw this logo kind of showed up, and they changed to silver and black. Again, that's one of my more favorite pennants. Finally, we have what is kind of like they call the negative version. These were probably 63, 64. And I got a couple over here that are just from my favorites just because of the logo on them. These came out sometime in the 70s. I got another pennant poster down here. Again, talking about that merger series. This was actually the first version that came out in 1967. Merger between the AFL and the NFL. All teams came out with a poster, and this was the Raiders version of it. A couple other small things here. This is a felt. This has Professional Football's dynamic organization. It used to be what the Raiders put on a lot of their emblems and posters and stuff before the later came out with when they won the championship. They became Commitment to Excellence. Okay, I'm in my unfinished basement now, as you can see. I'm going to get this work done here pretty soon, but for now I've put up some posters for what it might look like. These are, again, continuing on with the Sports Illustrated. This is getting into the 80s and the 90s, towards the end of the 70s and 80s and into the 90s. Got Todd Christensen and Ray Guy, and of course, once again, the great Ken Stabler. And then after they moved to LA, they had Howie and they had Marcus Allen. Wasn't long after this, though. So many other companies, Costco Brothers and Nike and Starline, that started doing posters, and Sports Illustrated just kind of faded out. So there's a couple of them right there that I'm talking about. Everyone knows about the ball player. And then you got, of course, the Judge with Lester Hayes. That's an old poster that came from London between the American Bowl. One of the other things I like to collect are these posters that are of schedules. This one here is from 1977. I've got 78 through 83 over here, and you can kind of follow along as the one claims Pro Football's winningest team, and then they win a championship, and then you start to see them saying world champions on them as they win, and the commitment to excellence. And then and once again you also see the this one's from 77, and the Pro Football's dynamic organization, actually 78. So continuing on, a couple of Super Bowl posters I have. Again, back to the merger series. These go into the 70s when they brought these out. There's a famous run poster from Nike with Bo. Backside is a Royal uniform. It's an old Kenny Stabler poster. It's pretty rare and beat up. This here, the black posters, those are from Starline. They came out, and again, the Raiders were in LA. Some of the nice photographs. I really like the way those came out. And here, when the Raiders would get a player in the Hall of Fame, they came out with a poster for each one. We've got one for Fred Biletnikoff, and there was one for Art Shell and Willie Brown, Al Davis, and then the original ones from Jim Otto and from George Blanda when they were elected to the Hall of Fame. So a few other items. I collect just about everything, and this is just really a small portion. But one of the things I like is the old Christmas cards I used to send out. This one was from Alice First from '63, '69. There again, there's the old poster that I had when I was a kid that I loved so much. It's from '71. These are from the mid-'60s and '70s. Different years they would come out with the team logo. One year they got kind of fancy, and on the inside it had the team photograph. Let's see, that's from 1972. Got the whole team in there. Later years they came out with this style. Today you just get an email from them, which is fine. That's just today's technology. Press guides, that's another thing I collect. I've got pretty much all the run from about '64 into the 2000s. They quit making them a few years back. You used to be able to go to the Raider Image, you get them, but you can't do that anymore. They don't sell them. This here is the first game book from game number 1. Mine happens to be in mint shape. I got it from a guy who was a press guy who bought it and then stuck it in his drawer. And that's where it sat for years and years. These are great because if you go through and you open them up on the inside, there's lots of different information. I love the old ads and stuff that you can see. There's one of them I actually have that talks about hiring a raider. And they have a form you can fill out if you have a possible job to hire a raider in the off season and give somebody a job. You could fill a form and send it in, and they could contact you as a possible job. These are newsletters that the season ticket holders used to get. This one here happens to be the very first one from '63 that Al put out. What's significant about this is a couple things. Here he talks about hiring Dick Romanowski. Any Raider fan worth his salt knows that Dick was the equipment manager, and he passed it on to his family. His family still are equipment managers with the team. And then there's another article in here talking about, and then it continues on and talks about Johnny Herrera, 16-year-old son of Andy Herrera. Well, Johnny Herrera went on to be John Herrera, of course, who was an executive for the Raiders for many, many years. So here he is, 16 years old, and Dick just got hired by the Raiders. Interesting stuff. Another note on the back, as you can see, you could buy season tickets, total for $31. And if you didn't have that, you could pay $10 down and get on a payment plan and get your season tickets. I pay a little bit more for that these days. Some glasses I have. This is from 1960. And of course on the back it's got the original schedule. These could be found in those game day books. You could order them up for a couple dollars a piece. A friend of mine gave me one of these for Christmas, which I absolutely love. These are really hard to find, obviously being glass. Some of these are like from 1960. In the 70s, you could get these, I believe it was Shell or Chevron. If you have a tank of gas, you could get a Raider one or a 49er one in the Bay Area. These are the horns that you could get to cheer your team on. Again, this is about 1964 or so. It's got that logo that Al came out with. This here is the early years. This one came full of popcorn. You can actually put the score on there if you wanted. And when you're done eating your popcorn, then you could cheer your team on. Back to the old black and gold Raiders. Speaking of black and gold, this is an old 1960s, the old sideline cape the team would wear. This would be on the sidelines to keep players warm. These are pretty cool, they're pretty rare. I actually wore this to a game one time, and it's an embarrassment on my wife, but wore it anyway, and Jim Otto saw me wearing it, and he thought, he thought he was the only one that had one of these. So anyway, they just wrap around. On the inside it's old canvas and wool, and they just wrap around to keep the player warm when they're on the sideline during those old candlestick games. So most people know the story of the Raiders. They originally were a team in Minnesota. and then they got moved to Oakland once the NFL put the Vikings in town. And so they had to name the team, so there was a contest held. And this is original newspapers from the very beginning. And you can see this is here, Name the Football Team contest. And you could win a trip to Acapulco. So this would be the what you would fill out and put whatever name that you thought was the proper name, and then go ahead and submit it, and mail it in. As time went by, there were several articles written talking about the contest, encouraging people to enter. If you read these different articles, some of the local sports writers, they suggest different names. It's kind of funny, names like Saints and other teams. Here's some of the local Chamber of Commerce and one of the owners getting together. Gridiron contest to end tonight. It's kind of been an interesting read. These papers came from a local high school coach in Oakland. I got these from his estate, so he was interested in the team coming, and he kept these papers all those years. So eventually, the team was named the Seniors, and this is the young lady. Her name was Helen Davis that won the contest with the name Seniors. But you can see right away the writers, a change good. They're already starting to campaign. They don't like the name. There was a guy named Chet Soda. He was an executive with the Raiders. He used to call everybody Senior. So everybody thought the fix was in, that he started it, and he may have planted the seed for the name Seniors to people, and so maybe the whole fix was in on that. So a week later, you can see Raiders has been selected and takes over Seniors. Thank God. I think we're all much happier with that. Once again, the next day, there's a thing about Raiders, a hit. Interesting enough, it talks about the new winner. His name is it's Ken Martin 48. He even gives his address. But interestingly, 26 people submitted the name Raiders for the contest. So he was one of the 26. He got his name drawn from a hat. And here you go. Rest in peace is what this says for Seniors. They gave it a bit of a funeral, and that was the end of that. Also, the gal that won, they gave her contest sheet. They both ended up winning their trips down to Acapulco. And also, I like this column, Raiders rated as a solid name. So personally, I'm glad I did. I love the name Raiders. I can't imagine it being anything else. Finally, it's a collectible. I'm obviously a PSL holder with the Las Vegas Raiders. It's extremely disappointing that we won't get to go this year. Obviously, with the PSL and that, I've been to a Raider game every season since early 80s at least. So I'm pushing close to 40 years since I've missed a game. And I think about it, it's upsetting that I won't get to go this year. The price that I paid for the PSL is probably more money than I've spent for all those years combined. But when I stop and take a minute and think about the tragedies this COVID-19 has caused people have lost friends, they've lost family, people have died. Not being able to go to a football game seems pretty dang minor to this all. So we'll just keep Raider on, and we'll go next year, and we'll make the best of it, and we'll just hopefully have a great season, and we'll start another 40-year run or whatever it may be next season. So anyway, my name's Doug. I've been a Raider fan my whole life. It's part of my life. It always will be. Live or die, win, lose, or tie, as they say, Raiders until I die.